everybody. It is Cinnamon Cooney, your Art Sherpa, and this is your Patron series. This is the Bird in Flight. We're going to be painting this really gorgeous owl raptor that is in the act of landing with the wings outstretched and backlit. We're going to cover gridding, how to get it in. We're going to cover all the aspects of how we get the lighting effect, the feather textures, the background. We're just going to really spend time with this. Talk about the techniques and processes for creating it, and really try to make it not only a satisfying painting, but also a lot of fun and something that you can do at home. The patron classes sometimes take on more complicated subjects we won't do on the YouTube channel.
This button.
That
there
button.
You go.
This boy right here. You move him over to the blank easel while we're doing it.
Sure.
So you should have gotten a newsletter. If you're not getting the newsletter, please let us know. And it would have had the references, your grids, your traceables, everything about this. As we do them each week, I will send you newsletters with like last week's info and what's coming up this week. And so please don't unsubscribe from them, because it seems to be my best way to communicate with you guys about what is happening for your specific stuff, at least until we get the new website up and we have a in the website kind of texting system. Is that correct, John?
Mm-hmm.
On the mic is my husband, John.
Hello.
Hopefully at the point that you're at the power patron level, you are more precious. You are aware of who that is.
You may have heard me lurking.
May have heard him lurking. This is an 11 by 14 surface that I'm on, and I'm starting out with Mars Black and Titanium White. I'm going to do a pretty deep slate gray on the whole background, dry it, and grid in the owl.
Grid it.
If you've never done gridding, this is a really good class on that. And if you wanted to learn how to do that, gridding is what I consider a bridge skill. So in art, sometimes there's this fairy tale where people say to us, well, you've got to be able to look at an object and freehand it, and that's how you learn how to draw. That's an awesome skill, and I highly recommend anytime you've got free time to just grab a pencil and paper and sort of draw the things that you see around you. It will help train the right side of your brain to see spatial relationships and translate them to paper. That being said, not everybody has a natural aptitude towards that skill. That skill can be one that can be challenging to take up. And sometimes bridging skills like tracing or gridding can help your brain start to make connections about how three-dimensional objects are related on a flat surface. These are skills that you would use in art no matter where you were in your journey. You will always use transferring methods like tracing. When we get into the more woo area of it, we call it transferring methods of getting an idea from one place to another place. So projections and if you think about it, this is old world stuff here, because camera obscuras and projections, many of the great Renaissance painters probably used projection to get the skin tones, to get the values, to get some of that quality that they got in the work. And that's something they're starting to realize more and more now in artists. Gridding is something you will always use if you have to radically change the size of something. If you went from a small painting to, say, a mural and you wanted to have it be exactly the same, gridding is a method to do that. Now, there's a lot more on gridding, and I sadly cannot teach you the math part of that.
You're not a math
I can
teacher.
barely do the math part of that.
Math is not your strongest suit.
It isn't, right? Which is why you see me create grids for you that are 1 inch to 1 inch ratio. So if I have an 11 by 14 surface, I'm going to give you an 11 by 14 grid to reference.
So this one's 11 by 14, sure enough.
And I changed the image and everything. You'll notice that I added a little bit at the top and bottom in scale. And how I picked that was the object, I don't want to add or take away when it comes to the object. But on the horizons, on the top part of it and the bottom part of it, you really can, because it's a bunch of leaves. And you can always add some more leaves. So if you're ever thinking about how can I resize an object, I'm painting something, it's a very different scale. What you'll see there, and I don't think my hand, maybe, I don't know how to say it.
There,
I want to project my hand over it. So these areas of neutral objects, which are the plants, right here to the side, here to the side, above and below, are the easiest places for you as an artist to rescale because they're not very anchoring as an object. It's just a bunch of flowers. You can just add more flowers. No one knows how many flowers would be in your reference. They don't have that information. And I don't send it to your friends and family to like out you. So if you're like, oh, I'm doing this on a 16 by 20, what you want to place well in the 16 by 20 is the central figure, which is this owl. This doesn't work for everything. It works for this type of painting really well. You place your central figure really well. You can always add more weird background trees and more weird background foreground flowers. Just do that for miles. So that's the thing. I can't see the chat.
You can't see the chat.
I have to use, I'm using my, because my printer is not set up yet. So I am still using my iPad as reference.
I saw
wife comment.
There was mail delivery.
Ah, was there mail?
Got my attention. I was looking out the window going, mail call.
All right. So hopefully you guys have seen, you got the notice. I don't know if moderator Cad Red posted in Patron group today. I meant to do it and didn't get it done. And I don't know if it got done to let people know that this lesson was dropping today.
We'll see what I'm
kind of behind the gun this week, to be real honest.
Behind?
I am behind it.
But look, we have cool new visual effects. Like,
is that going to be one of those things that we have to lose because in the context of modern reality, it isn't cool? I just don't know it yet. Because no one told me. Behind the gun is still okay, right?
I don't know. You don't want to be in front of it.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
We can just, I don't know.
Okay.
Behind the brush.
Oh, thank you, Cat Red. Cat Red did put that up, so people know. It's a weird time of day. I'm going to start out by just painting this a dark gray.
Are you? Can I still play with my
capacity? You play with all your stuff. You can play. Yeah, you can mask it. I'm painting it a dark gray. You don't really need to know that much about it.
It's not that interesting.
I'm going to take black and white and mix them into slightly more than a 1-to-1 ratio.
Now, are you thoroughly mixing or allowing this to mix on the surface?
It can be loosely mixed because this is what we would refer to as a colored ground. Now, in acrylic, people often would talk about an acrylic ground as kind of a wash, colored wash that would go on the back surface, which for a long time was a no-no. The Golden just released a thing saying that you could do glazes and washes. You just have to let it cure for 2 or 3 weeks for it to bind.
Yeah, no,
that was interesting.
You threw out a whole bunch of words there that kind of are used the same but are not.
I know. How about walk me through them while I'm painting this gray, and I will separate up their definitions and meanings. Good catch, baby.
All right. So you said you said some
acrylic colored
ground. What's it a colored ground?
The color ground is just when your whole surface has a solid color that you begin with. You can use it to create depth in a painting. You can use it so that if you're painting loose, there isn't white canvas popping through. If you're really good at color theory, you can use it to create extraordinary drama within a painting. Like, a master of that might actually do an orange colored ground behind all this green.
Now, how wet is that? The load on your brush there?
Very damp.
Very damp.
No, I mean lightly damp. Sorry.
Lightly damp. Okay.
Lightly damp. Not heavy with water. It's just enough to thin the paint to brush it out, but not enough to even impact binding on any level.
Now, just a moment ago, you said also a wash could be used, or this is kind
of a lot of people traditionally would use washes, and I have to tell you, some very vicious fights on the forums, on the art forums, over whether that's acceptable to do in acrylic painting.
Okay.
And the heart of that fight was really about washes don't bind to canvas at all. No. Right. And we used to think not bind at all. So if you did a wash and then you painted a whole thing over it, then what would happen? Your painting could delaminate from its surface, which is not ideal. We'd especially do it over time. It wouldn't do it maybe in the first year or 2 years, but it would do it at some point. So then there was the thinking, well, let's make browns a more solid surface or use airbrush medium as a way to get that watery effect for the ground. But what really everybody came to is just paint a solid underpainting color.
If you're new to this, though, a wash is by its kind of what the name
implies. Well, if you're really new, you need to watch my Start Here video.
Sure, yeah.
If you're really, really new and and you're like, man, what are all these terms? There
That's
is
the
a
best place.
playlist. It's Start Here. Just watch at least the first few. They're short videos, and they actually will define terms. And I really try to make them where if you had just never been introduced to anything in art, then it would let you catch up really quick.
Okay,
So you wouldn't be like, I don't know what that term is. I don't know what that term is, because you wouldn't know unless you knew. So that video series is there for you.
Before you move on there, can you show me up here in this corner here? Like, because this is where, I mean, I'm going to zoom up here. This is the right load, right, for the amount of brush. There you go. And you don't want that to be too watery or you end up with a wash.
Right. If it was very watery or drippy, look like watercolor, that's a wash.
And you're not looking for that much water.
Not looking for that much water. And with these big mop brushes, I've got to watch that a little bit more. It's why I do synthetics and not goat, besides the shedding problem.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I was telling somebody kind of comes from an oil sensibility and they go into acrylic because they'll keep using their goat brushes. You're like, oh, you're new.
Don't fall
As soon as they find a synthetic, then they always switch over because they're like, not that goat can't be lovely. It does a nice soft blend and everything. It just holds water. Your hair holds water. You don't have to smooth it like this. I'm just being fussy. We're spending time together.
Us Capricorns got to stick together.
How does this become a Capricorn thing?
Goat.
I could have called that and not walked right into that moment. Could have done that. Could have done that.
That's okay. Dad jokes just stay.
They are the best reason for living. I tell you that right now. Okay.
Well, we can
I'm going to dry because I got to do the long process of gridding.
All right. So, if you are here, don't forget, don't use heat. You know that stuff. We'll go over here and you can see it's surprisingly streaky. You can see here on the surface that she didn't get a perfectly even coating. There's sort of a little bit of a blend from one side to another. So don't feel like you had to get a perfectly even coating on yours, because that's not the goal here. You're going to be covering a lot of this with some of the foreground objects. So you just needed that even gray. And if you're joining us as a time traveler in Rewind, welcome. Very nice to see you. Don't forget to check out your Patron dashboard, probably how you got here in the first place. Make sure you get all the updates and new stuff that's coming out, because there's a lot. We're working on a lot of new things right now. And Cinnamon's doing a pretty good job of keeping that stuff updated in the newsletter and on the dashboard. So definitely keep an eye on those areas.
Yeah. Watching out.
What are you pondering?
My mops are Princeton, the blue handle ones, and they shed. Are your mops synthetic or are they goat? Because Princeton does both. I think the blue handle ones are always synthetic, but I'm not 1,000% sure. So that's why I'm asking that follow-up question, Callie. And what I would say is they shouldn't shed and you should take them back.
Yeah.
My Princeton does not shed.
Modern glues are not great.
None of my Princeton, like these. So these here, these round blenders, no shedding. I have a Princeton mop, no shedding. But to be real candid, I have this Artist Loft and no shedding. Now I do some things when I'm picking my brush. I tend to be rough on my brushes. I always check them and kind of pull at them. If they're not supposed to be a shedding brush, I want to know right away if they didn't glue that in or didn't bind it, because I don't want to go home and like put it to a canvas and have it go hair. And I'm like, oh, look, multimedia. Yay. Now what I'm doing is I'm letting my surface kind of cool down because I was using a little bit of heat to get it to dry.
Just as I was telling everyone not to do that.
And the risk that you have when you're gridding is if your paint is still soft, the lines can make a gridded indent. If you press too hard, they can make a gridded indent. And if the paint is not fully cured or dry, the pigment can get in there and make a permanent indent.
Mm-hmm.
None of those things you want. Now, on this one, we're repainting almost the entire surface. So that does help us, but still, not having it be like that is always a good thing. So my particular T-squares are, as you can see, 12 inches. Mm-hmm. So not quite long. You can get 14-inch versions of these, but these are just cheap, and I just flip it around to get it. So I'm going to make a mark every 1 inch.
I love that you found the left-handed T-square.
It was on sale. And the way those pencil sharpeners I talked about yesterday were $22 last night, this morning, $27. I was talking to John about like we should get some and have them like something fun, like a unicorn or something.
Mm-hmm.
And, and have the artist point feature added to that whole thing. But I was like, I don't want to, if we sell them on Amazon, I don't want to do that weird raise the price thing because there's demand. That makes me so mad. I understand it's good for capitalism, I suppose, and I like capitalism. Capitalism is good. I just feel like the price should be the price.
Yeah.
What I'm doing here is just making sure that my lines are, in fact, 1 inch apart.
Are you a Saturn buyer?
Is the price the price?
Well, it was. That was their bullshit.
I am not a car buyer. John can verify that in my life. I haven't even done that many cars.
No. Although, that's not been like...
It's not my, it's not a focus that I have.
No, she very much would rather have the latest Jasper Stardust paintbrush and set of limited edition Christmas box set paints.
Yeah. I think my T-square has done a thing called getting off square, and that's why you're seeing me check it from 2 directions. That sometimes happens.
I wouldn't necessarily trust the edges of those surfaces to be perfectly T-squared either.
And that's why sometimes going back 2 different directions is helpful.
Yeah.
Because you can see that between those 2, and I just want an accurate grid, so I just do this and it'll give me what I need. I think I'm getting a straighter line from the bottom. Top seems a little
top
bit.
Edge may be a bit wonky.
It is wonky. And that happens. These are not precision canvases.
No, they're just, they're...
You ever look at canvas and you're like, why is so much money? It's precision canvas.
Yeah.
Handmade, hand-considered precision canvas. Isn't this fun? Gridding. Yay. So gridding is a slow and tedious process. It can help you if you do any portrait work. I wouldn't do portrait work without gridding. It's a very rare portrait artist that does not grid. Most of them do. And the reason is that is your best chance for getting an accurate representation of your subject.
I see.
Bird, not as important, but it is a nice way to learn the process. I mean, if this bird looks like Carl instead of Bob, nobody knows that we didn't paint Bob because people aren't really that owl literate. Mm-hmm. But in your family, people know the difference between Carl and Bob. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And they will notice if you get the nose wrong or the ears wrong or all those things. People get really, really wildly crazy about their portraits. Look at what Winston Churchill did. Mm-hmm. His portrait. He did not appreciate the candor of that artist.
So what happened? Tell us.
There was a royal portrait commissioned of him by a very famous modernist artist. And the guy came out, did several sittings with him and painted him. No one's ever seen it because Winston Churchill took it out and burned it. Did not like how he looked in the portrait. So what I'm saying is sometimes you need to grid. The guy had gridded, then maybe he would have been okay. Actually, it was probably a beautiful piece, the guy.
I think that Royal Commission portrait artists were the first Photoshop masters. Because they were like, I got to make it look like you.
But not you.
But better. Like you in perfect lighting.
It's the first duck face.
That's right. And they're like, is that really Prince Ferdinand? Like, well, if you look at it just this, there I see it.
Yeah, but notice this. Okay, so you go on a date now, on a video date now, and you get to the restaurant, and he doesn't look like the picture. You can just leave. But back in those days, you could have taken a boat for like a month and a carriage for like 3 weeks and been peeing on the side of the road to get to your date and find out he does not look like his portrait. That is a problem to unwind.
Maybe a done deal.
Yeah. Oh, guess what else I learned today?
Well, I'm afraid to ask. What did you learn today?
There used to be Olympic medals for the arts. 145 Olympic medals were given out for the arts.
No kidding.
No kidding. They took it away as a thing. They decided, no, just sports. But it used to be music and poetry and art.
Huh.
And people won Olympic medals for the arts.
You know what? If there was an Olympic medal for sarcasm, I could win it. It's an art form.
There was an Olympic medal for acting like you're winning when you're losing. You could win it.
That's called bluff, and it's a skill.
It's not bluffing if we all know you're bluffing.
That just means I'm doing it wrong.
You do it wrong. You do it so wrong. So wrong. I'm just doing the same 1-inch thing coming across the other way. So yeah, I was really tripped out about that. And I was like, could we commission? I mean, of all the things that could happen, couldn't we have like that were exciting or that we were changing? Could we just, bring that back? I think we could. You can see I'm just checking these side marks to be sure. As you do. Make sure that they are spot on. I might even come up this way. It just sometimes helps to have a couple test marks.
As spot on as a left-handed T-square can be.
A really cheap. This is, okay, so first of all, if my architect had one of these T-squares, I would fire my architect right then. Because this would get you killed. But for art, it's okay.
Not OSHA approved.
It's definitely not OSHA approved.
What is that thing you're using there that you just saw?
Oh, and I want to find us one of these.
Yeah,
so this is this is a Taylor chalk tool.
Not helping.
I use the one from Dritz. It's got this nice thin chalk that you load into. It comes in colors. The reason I don't use the off-brand one is because I couldn't get anyone from the company to contact me back and verify that there wasn't wax or oil or some other product in their Dritz tool. And what I basically found out is like a bunch of people were like, oh, the Dritz was staining. What I realized, it wasn't the Dritz, it was the cheap lookalike that was staining the fabric. And so I contacted Dritz and they talked to me and verified that this is just clay and nothing else. So that is why it's not that I am not a fan of the generic. I am a fan of the generic. Generic is awesome, just not in this case. And would not be an awesome architectural ruler. No, those have to be precisioned in because engineers use them.
Is this a multi-part?
Is this a multi-part lesson? Oh, yeah. So right now, for whatever reason, the Power Patron lessons have been multi-part. We've been doing these as multi-parts. And then what's been happening, especially since we've been kind of on halt with the Red Queen, is that those are then going to the Precious Patrons after. And then I've also got some really cool extra paintings. I'm just trying to make sure that as we go through these weird growing pains, you guys just get a lot extra. It's my goal. Extra, extra, extra. So, yes, this isn't exactly what was described. This is more than what we described in the patronage. Look, we're delivering more than we promised. Is goal. Who's ringing?
I think the TV in the room next door. They didn't close the door too. I'll get it.
It's okay. It doesn't. I'm just like, it's totally okay. It hasn't thrown me that much. The kids throw me more than the ringing noise, and I would rather that they be where they are quietly listening to whatever's ringing. I don't feel like that's homework.
It is not, clearly.
I just don't feel like that's homework. I guess we'll call it a lunch break. Homeschool. You suck at it.
Yes.
That one was a little bit to dial in. You can see some of these are not. Again, this is a problematic T-square. It's still better than me freehanding a straight line. You say, wonder why you use it. Still better than me freehanding a straight line. And I probably will at this point. You know, I use these so much, I'm going to invest in an architectural one. The architectural ones are color Verdin. and they're always square and they're metal and they're
We have
sharp.
a couple. We have a couple. They're just huge.
They're just too big. That was from when I was in art school, though. So they're just too big. All right. The other trick about this is I have put numbers on the squares. I highly recommend that you match the numbers up, because if you're at all like me, all the little squares kind of run together. And if you go ahead and match up the numbers, you can always check that you're not off a square or a row before you get too far in. And if you make your own grids, I highly recommend taking this extra step. Right, so you can go, oh. So right in the middle, it's 7, 8, right? And down here at 4, 7, 8, and 4 is the top of Mr. Alzey's head. One of the things that you're going to notice when you look at a grid and then you look at this grid, you're going to say, why is this the size that it is? It feels like it's so much bigger. The square seems so much bigger on your reference. And basically, you just draw what you see in each square. Only what you see in each square. I may switch to my charcoal pencil here just to get an even better, finer line. You wouldn't normally like sit there and think of yourself as like, oh, the beak is like kind of over here. That's very strange. But when you line it all up and you go, oh, okay, yeah, I'm seeing it. So a lot of times you'll get a sense of how much your brain struggles to replicate what it sees when you're doing this. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is that this isn't a drawing in the way that you might draw in pencil. It is definitely a drawing in the way that you would draw for painting, which is much looser and not as detail oriented. Because you're going to paint over everything, there's really no point. Now, if I'm here, right, I'm here at 4, right, come down to 5, come down to 6.
This is a 1 for 1, right?
This is 1 for 1.
Then you skipped a square above his head. You got 3 squares above his head, and there's 2 there on the
See?
math.
See?
Although this might also be considered orienteering or geometry.
It's one of those things. That's why I number, and that's why John can go up. You started up too high. You just start on 4. And I started.
What'd you erase that with?
I'm just using a brush and water. And I'll draw it, regrid it in, and start over.
So, make sure you get it thoroughly dry so that when you redo that and you're drawing back over that, it doesn't soak into the surface. And that's why she's just quick drying.
In my own teachable moment. Why? I am being my own teachable moment here.
Well,
don't be your own teachable moment.
The bird would have just been higher in the scene.
He would have been higher in the scene, but we're working on our gridding skills, so we do want to functionally catch that.
That wingtip may have been up off the screen.
Yeah, it would have thrown everything off significantly. Can I get a microwave on my?
Yeah.
So 4, 7, 8. So this is where we need to be. Okay. John caught one. And that's what's important, is you catch them as you can. And then you correct where you need to. So it's always tempting for me to do this ahead of time, but I think it's really good when you guys get to see everything come in. I think it helps. Donna Cox, for my granddaughter's birthday, can't say I might choose something different for her. Everything on Prime was on sale for Amazon Prime Day. This one time they aren't jerks, lol. Yeah, yep, just checked. To moderator Cadbra just noticed that the pencil sharpener went up in cost. Hallie, it's so good to have you here today. I don't know how many people do we have. We have a quiet little crowd today, I think, because it's middle of the day. All right, then we'll start this again. Down one, go down another, and then this one here. Interestingly enough, we've got the 2 feet here, so I've really only got to worry about the stump, and the stump starts at 7. Crazy wild stump, which, we might make more interesting than it is. We'll have to see as we're painting.
Yep.
If we feel it warrants a more intense stump experience. So, and you can see like it is around 7 that you've got a little bit of a distant background line. So things above the line will tend to be the tree space, and things below will tend to be the flower space. Easy peasy lemon squeezy.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got the little flare out there. I'm going to come across 7 here. And into 6. And then we're going to go ahead and show the tail. And then right here, it kind of comes across 9. And then maybe back into. And here in 8 is a bit, his body kind of comes in a bit. And his feet are going to be here in relationship to that stump. He's going to be mostly wingspan. I think it will surprise you how much of him is wingspan. And birds have to have a lot more wing for a lift. Their bones are hollow, and my dad used to fly, so I used to hear about all the reasons why. He's got to have that wingspan to his weight ratio. But it's much more than you think. If you think how little this is, when you see the wings all the way up to the edge of the canvas will feel like it's all wings. Especially once it's painted. It'll be something. And if you have somebody in your life that loves natural paintings and loves naturalism, they're going to be so into this painting of yours. They're going to decide, this will be the painting where they're like, I wasn't really sure you're an artist, but now that I see this, I totally know you're an artist. Because you just painted something they like that they really do. But they're going to just assume that that was your moment. When really it was their moment. Many, many times you will have that experience. Now, there's some wonderful little upward little feathers that kind of come here, and then through 10 over into 12, and in 12 we have a little sharp kind of, it comes up even more, I think. You can see what I mean about, like, it's all the way to the edge here, isn't it? But you wouldn't think that 3 are just in one square, 3 and, going forward. And remember, even as you're painting, these will change somewhat. That's not going to stay completely the same. I'm going to come back down over here, the 8-9 space. And I'm not necessarily going to paint each feather coming up. I'm just going to try to capture that general shape of the wing. And scale that it's going to take up. We'll work out each individual feather in a little bit. This wing comes from about here to here. This one goes up at a much steeper climb over towards this left side. A great noise, isn't it?
I was going to say that's making that chalkboard sound.
Oh, it is. It's going chalkboard. I'm sorry for the chalkboardiness.
What are you thinking?
That I've got to raise the wing.
Raise the wing.
Yeah, because it's 3 here and 4 here has some of that wing showing in. So as you're going, you will absolutely see stuff like that, and you'll be like, "Oh, dude!" The 3 gonna come right there. And then there's a little bit that comes up into 2. Now over here into 2. And then we're going to do top one is top 1, 2. There's 1. And then in 4, we'll just start to come down general shape. 5, 4, 3, 5, 4. Well, it's really 6, 4. And then through 6, it's all the rest in the 6th row coming down. So, look, we sketched it in.
You did.
We did. We sketched it in. I mean, it took a minute.
We did.
It took a minute. Sometimes these things take a little minute, but now you have that sense of where objects are. And we can do a little bit of getting some of this nice background in because we're here.
Okay.
We have the colors out.
We're only at about 37 minutes.
Yeah, we can go another like 20.
All right.
Let's live big. I'm going to put out some brown. I'm going to put out some phthalo blue. Oh, nope, that was Prussian. Ignore me. I put out Prussian, just ignore me. I'm going to put out some green.
Green.
Already got some white out. And I'll come back in and get my, other colors if I find that I'm needing it. I guess I could put out some yellow just to be there to lighten it if it comes up. There's a few areas where it's slightly lighter. We'll see if we can get a nice little background in. Let me do a thing, John. Is there any way to get a screenshot of that, or I could take it with my iPad too?
We can hold on. We can totally get a screenshot of this at from the machine.
Okay, cool.
Trying to think if there's a better way. You may as well see if we can get a better, higher resolution one somehow.
I can do my iPad.
Yeah.
But not without teaching you code. I'm not going to teach you guys my code. That's not happening. That is not happening. I just want you guys, when it comes out on the letter.
We'll come across here and look from the side at which.
When we send out the newsletter, what will happen is, I got to get this correct.
Working on getting your picture taken.
Yeah, just a little bit. But that way, when you have the newsletter, because everybody always enjoys having this part of the reference, and it's really stage 1. We're just kind of cooking along right now.
Yeah.
All right, so we got one. So you guys have that. And also there's this part of the video.
Yeah.
Oh, I understand why people aren't finding this. This is under Zoom projects.
We may have organized it incorrectly.
Yeah, I think that would be hard to locate and understand what that was.
So do we need? How do we fix that?
I don't know. I will talk with team after and figure out how to make that more findable because I would never check
We'll work it
Zoom
out. We'll find
projects.
that in a minute. We'll get it reorganized.
We'll reorganize it. I see that as a genuine worry. I'm gonna take a little bit of my phthalo green and my brown. And over here, I'm gonna just start kind of working this deep green background.
Don't worry about it.
So yeah, sometimes it's really hard for us to rename or replay stuff. It may be going there, and I can see why people have been having a hard time finding it.
We'll get it figured out.
We'll get it figured out. We'll make it more intuitive. It's why we're doing a new website. Just coming across here with a little bit of green, and then every once in a while, like if I come in with just a little bit of this white, I'm going to add some little value changes. These are little touches. They're just out of focus little marks. So this is my silver ultimate varnish brush, and I really like it as a mop. If you had this one, you could do this for the little marks here as well. I'm just making sure we've got just a bit of that afoot, as they say. A little blue, maybe a little more white. We want it to be kind of very grayed out, even if it has that somewhat kind of feeling of blue sky. We want it a little bit grayed out. You can see I'm just touching. My pressure is so light. I don't know if we can close up on this.
Yeah, honestly.
It's going to be such a pretty painting. We're just making sure that these things are as mellow as they can be and kind of have that feel. A little brown when you got to gray it out. And these here. Because there's certainly a few more of this. And I can always come back and add more. I'm just kind of strengthening these in here. You can see the background showing through can be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Add a little blue. Every once in a while I may want to rinse out, and what I'll do is I'll come back over. Ooh, that was a hot mess. I just squeezed a bunch of paint water out onto my pants. Did not feel nice. Again, green and brown. Just adding little darker values. These are trying to make that dappled light effect in the background, right? I made a mess, sir.
I
My
did?
pants. I squeezed the brush out onto my pants instead of into the towel.
That happens.
It does to me. Just going forward. Kind of creating those little senses of light value and dark value. And we'll come through and we'll do this. It's a nice background to work out. And it's definitely one. No. Gnat fly. Almost my coffee. And you know what? He can't have it. I'm going to add a little yellow to the mix because there's just a smidge of it over here. And while it's not that bright next to each other, relative to each other, they'll seem pretty bright. And yeah, we are losing some of our feather detail. But you kind of you got the scale right. If you get this basic scale right, even as you paint out little details, it won't harm you very much. I'm going to add a little white to that. Making these little diffused areas of light and dark. And we'll come back in with our small little brush and even piecemeal that out even a little more. But I just like that feeling of this sort of distant foliage. Isn't that nice?
Yeah.
Coming back into some brown green. And it will make things feel like I'm going to take this down through row 8. I'm going to paint it down at least through row 8. Not all the way through it. 7 and partially 8. And the reason it's partial is just because, we've got the flowers coming back. I just want to have there be a complete layering. And then this is, again, the dark green, dark blue. So we'll go darker over here. When I layer my flowers over the top, I just want it to feel finished and resolved. That's looking pretty okay, right?
Mm-hmm.
Come back over. And the big brush is nice to use for some of this stuff because it makes some nice big spots, but you want to sometimes touch it and capture just less where you can. And I'll go ahead and brush some of this up lightly over my wing lines. The reason for this is when I put the feathers in, that way the paint is, consistent through the process. I'm going to now wipe this out over here because I definitely don't want to wipe it into my pans again. And I'm going to grab my small round Princeton blender. And create some little bits of maybe speckled. See if we can get that effect. Diffused bokeh lighting back here. You can kind of see how we're doing, right? Sometimes I got to get a little water on there just to make sure they blend well. Remember, this is that sense of that there's light coming through this forest. There's light in the forest. So that'll help explain his backlit kind of wing space. I'm just taking little touches, little bits. All right. Little bits, little touches. I get somewhat back there, but you know what? I think it needs to go more into that green yellow. I'm going to take it a little more into my green yellow space over here. There we go. Not everywhere, just a couple of places. Adding some of those diffused little moments.
Mm-hmm.
You can always get back into your green and brown. And come back in and weave some darker values through here. Need to make it darker, get some blue into it. You can always get it darker. I find it fun just to sort of paint this stuff. And I enjoy this background as much as I enjoy the subject.
Yeah.
You know, it's fun for me to capture these. So you know, finding a way to paint this out of focus forest, which, by the way, man, we have a lot of in our painting, right? Like in painting, out of focus forest happens a lot. It's definitely skill worth developing. I added more water because the brush was not blending or doing the job I wanted it to do. And I also think it's good practice to sort of, even in this abstracted, out of focus background, see if you can capture the things that you're seeing there. Can you capture the light as it's coming through? Can you capture that stuff and, you know, find a way to paint it that communicates, navigates, shows you I'm just brushing back and forth. My pressure is so light and I'm just dusting it, dusting it, dusting it. It's the layers. It's the fact that we went ahead and, you know, we painted stuff underneath first so that there's a depth of color. I get a little bit of the right here and a little bit of the blue. There's a couple spots that had some really light aspects to them. And I'm just looking to see if I can. You can see where you put the lighter stuff. It looks like it's lighter.
Mm-hmm. Very nice background.
Isn't that fun?
Yeah.
We're still painting, right?
Yeah.
Even when we're doing something that's like this, we're still having to do the work of painting. There's no getting out of that part. Go back into my green and brown. Capturing the out of focus background. I think we're getting there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm capturing some darker elements and then balancing it with the lighter elements.
Mm-hmm.
Love to play all these things off of each other.
Yeah.
I'll make sure I put in group and in the next loser and everything, both the gridded stage and this painted stage of it. So if you're painting along, you can see where we're at and what we're doing. Too much glue. That's okay. I just work into it. I don't care.
Mm.
I'm not particularly stressed about it. I'm just trying to make sure I have values so that when I come back with these flowers, that's going to look particularly awesome. Another interesting thing we can do while we're here is we can start something because it's not going to take a lot from us. I'm going to come here and in the background, there's this sort of grayed out. Grab just a little bit of that kind of white flower background. Very light and soft and out of focus as well. We can start to paint that, even though part of more of our middle ground, getting it in now is an ideal opportunity.
Mm.
You know, it's okay that it's transparent and showing some of the gray
Yeah.
underneath because we don't want it to be bright at this stage. We just want to see the beginning of how this is lightening. You see me taking little pops of more light to it.
Mm-hmm.
That's just to give values. So even when you're painting something that's out of focus, you can really, really paint it. And kind of coming down, there's this sort of
Yeah.
green yellow that's happening down here. Again, it's very light, isn't it?
Yeah.
Again, just paying attention to the reference, to the painting itself. Right? Because the reference should never be more important than the painting in front of you.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes we get caught into a place where an object or an idea or an expression is in the reference, but maybe not looking great in our painting, and we'll keep fighting with it to make sure that the reference, is perhaps honored when really it didn't need to be. See, that's a very nice out of focus. And it doesn't mean that we won't come back and out of focus again. But now we've got some kind of out of focus flowers.
Yeah.
That we've started to loosely paint in. There's a bit of that going on the other side. And again, you'll notice that I kind of went in with the gray white instead of white white. And that is because we can always build up. We can always build up and exaggerate and make more. It is challenging to make less.
Yeah.
So you can always make it whiter.
I like the background.
You like how it's coming in?
Yeah.
I just grabbed a little bit of my burnt sienna, my phthalo green, and my cad yellow to make this. It is a brighter yellow green, but it's not like that spring yellow green that we can get. Just kind of getting the under work in now. Kind of the why not of it all. I think this will be one that's like the pirate ship for the patrons, where it's just a great painting that you get to do over here.
Yeah. I like that. I like how the background has come together.
Yeah, I do too. It gives us something to kind of anchor into. And you can see him just creating that sense of what's happening underneath. What's out of focus, what we're really pretty.
It really is.
Wonder if there would be a way to do anything. Well, there's always a way, but I wonder if I could make anything meaningful with this technique in the form of an abstract. At this sort of out of focus value technique. I think we got a nice start.
Yeah.
This is a start, guys.
It really is.
This is, it gives us a sense of where we're going. It gives you guys something to do. Colors, just to go over them again, were Mars Black, Titanium White, Burnt Sienna, Phthalo Green, Phthalo Blue. I accidentally put out some Prussian, but we didn't use that. And Cad Yellow. I used mostly these two brushes. And we gridded. We have the reference for you from the grid that I'll make sure that you get. And we have this for you that I will make sure that you get. And then when we come back, we will do, really, because none of the foreground or middle ground goes over him in any way, he almost exists. I would say the stump is more impacted by what's around it than him. He's almost above it and beyond it and outside of it. So what that really means is that because of his placement, we can really come in next week and do all the stump and all the flowers very easily, and beautiful versions of the stump and flowers. And then we'll get on to him. So next week will be at least we will resolve all the stump and all the flowers. So get to here.
Yep.
And I will see you next week, probably in the evening.
Yeah.
We'll see. I'll let you guys know in the newsletter. And we will paint that next stage.
All right.
Thank you for coming today. Thank you for watching this video. Thank you for being a patron. Thank you for feedback, because that's how we improve what we do. And we don't mind improving it. We're always up for it. Making it better is what it's about. Be good to yourself. Be good to each other. And I want to see you at an easel really soon. Bye-bye.